Hello, you big cats and kittens, or ladies and gentlemen, or however you prefer to be addressed. Or it's another video thing, and this time is for 2020, the big 4/2020. Hope everyone's out there staying safe, social distancing. Gotta respect COVID-19 and all that. Still in the middle of a pandemic, sadly, but I hope you out there have fun. Have fun. Um, Anyways, sorry, person messaging me. So today I want to talk about, instead of just like weed and all this stuff, the very most basic thing to talk about on 420, I want to talk about people who kind of, I mean, they're pro weed legalization, but their underlying ideology is very weird when you actually break it down. And that, of course, I'm talking about is small government conservatism. Of course, now you may be saying, well, a lot of people, especially from the left, are going to look at libertarianism and think that, well, that is just small government conservatism. It's weed smoking, gay marrying Republicans. What are you talking about? And what I say to that is, if that's the case, then I guess one would make the argument that libertarian is essentially then a left-wing term, or maybe just the right has completely taken the idea of liberty away. I don't think so. I think you can have left-leaning libertarians, and maybe you would just argue, well, that is just libertarians. So that is a big part of it. But let's assume you don't think that. And I still kind of identify in that sort of sphere, so it is kind of weird of me to break this down like this, but what I define as libertarian is much more nuanced than most people, and I think it has to be, because for everyone. Because libertarianism in itself is it's just about a preference of freedom. How you go about it, whether it's pro-capitalism like the right-wing libertarianism, or anti-capitalism, or capitalism to a certain degree, or socialism, or mutual aid, or whatever you want to use. And that's a whole different conversation. So anyways, let's focus on small government conservative types. Or for example, people like this, well, I think we all know who. Especially like Tea Party people. No offense. I have laughed on one of my friends, and I love you guys. But what I'm going to argue then is maybe y'all just need to call yourselves like classical liberals, which is a boring term, but sorry, you don't get to call yourself conservatives. You want to switch, I mean, that's the thing. Like, if they just switch themselves to calling themselves classical liberals, I can be okay with it. Just neoliberals. Be people of like, yeah, we don't mind corporate, or if like you're anti-corporation, you want to stink yourself, but still are free market, but still are conservative-ish. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to work it out for you people. That's going to be your problem, not mine. Well, actually, it would be kind of mine too, in some ways, but I'm fine. Worry about yourselves. Anyways, so I got some notes, because you know how I am. I like to go off into space and just talk forever and ever. So we got these notes, making sure I am on track. Number one, conservatism places institutions before individuals. Yes. So here's the thing. Now, not American conservatism typically, because it is, classical liberalism and blah, blah, blah. But even though it has evolved closer and closer to what conservatism means to the rest of the world over time. And I think that's just naturally what conservatism does. Because one of the most underlying things about conservatism, you can look at Edmund Burke, you can look at any of the classical conservative-minded people, is that you have institutions like government and capitalism and corporations, these are, you place those are what keeps everything going. And those incentivize people who are otherwise bad-natured to do good things for each other. Because conservatism is, I think, necessarily has a negative viewpoint of human nature. Like I said, this is especially for the rest of the world, but American conservatism, that especially is of the big government variety, that's what it represents. And I think that is just generally conservatism. In fact, if you look at a lot of old, like I said, Edmund Burke and a lot of these old conservatives, and you look at a lot of socialists, a lot of them would sounded somewhat similar sometimes, because other than maybe like the criticisms obviously of capitalism and whatnot, but a lot of their attitudes outside of the market were fairly similar. So social conservatism is something that can be prevalent, for example, in socialism as well, which people associate as a left-wing ideology, obviously, but it can still be there. It's sneaky. And I think, so really what I'm trying to say is I think libertarianism and this social conservatism especially are diametrically opposed. Does that mean someone can be social conservative personally and still just be a libertarian politically? Yeah, sure. Why not? I don't see a problem with. But in terms of trying to meld them together policy-wise, fundamentally diametrically opposed in every way. I think, for example, libertarians, one thing, well, like left, the classical liberal thing and just the liberal thing in general was this idea of secularism. It's very new, because before it was the state and religion is one. And this is a very liberal, very changing, very revolutionary idea to separate them. And conservatives back in the day, not a big fan of that, as you can imagine, because they want to keep things the same or be retroactive and go back to a time before. Sometimes that time before, I guess, could be a time of more freedom, but and then that's where it gets, that's why the terms liberal and conservatives do get a little complicated, because they are relative. They can be very relative. But I'm what I'm trying to do is talk about why it's weird that as Americans, we have this term of small government conservatism. Anyways. But yeah, so classical liberalism and conservatism, though, that is the thing, though. They're not exactly the same. I mean, that's why libertarians always they will preference themselves out amongst the conservatives, even if they feel like they are the same or similar. But let's face it, I think even classical liberals are not conservatives. They have this underlying view that freedom is more important than institutions. Conservatives don't have that. That's liberal. It's a liberal idea. Obviously, then you have a lot of progressives and how they place institutions and blah 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 above people. But if you look at really what the progressives want to do, they want to have institutions that, at least in theory, maybe you might disagree in practice do this, but in theory, they say benefits the people. The institutions are there to benefit the people. And technically in conservatism too, but in conservatism it's more to restrict them, like a dog, from doing bad things. And kind of to promote them to do good things through a personal responsibility. And progressivism is just about supporting the individuals. Both have an underlying view that the institutions are important, yes, but that's because ideologies will generally have some things in common. This isn't new. I mean, you can probably find any two ideologies, but will have some things in common. Conservatism cares about safety over, so yes, we already did talk about that. They care, and it's about safety over freedom. They're not preferencing freedom. They're talking about safety, and then once again, progressivism is safety net, or I guess safety in that sense too, but not as much so. And then obviously what libertarianism would be, I think. So you get classical liberals, then you get libertarians who are a little bit more radical than the classical liberals. They think government can be a bit smaller and maybe say, the individuals or private markets or communities or whatever can do a little bit more than for themselves, or it's even maybe outright wrong for the government to participate in those various things. Oh yes, and the religious right, social conservatism, yes. Religious right is social conservatism, and they like I said, that's just traditional conservatism. That's conservatism 101. The state and the faith. And then yes, conservatism makes. All right, so I already went through all my notes here. I don't want to try to keep these videos super long and drag on about what I'm going rah, 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 and repeat myself a bunch. So I'm just going to probably end it here. Like I said, happy 420, and please be safe, social distancing, self-quarantining. We're going to go through this pandemic together. And yeah, so please comment, like, subscribe, tell me why I'm wrong, tell me why I'm right. What do you think? What are your opinions? I want to hear from you all. I really do. I always like hearing from other people's opinions and, grow and change. Anyways, see you later.